Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Elhamdülillahi Rabbil alemin. Ve salatu ve selamu ala seyyidina Muhammedin ve ala alihi ve sahbihi ecmain. Alhamdulillah, we are in Kashmir. And dear Professor Talat Ahmed, Vice Chancellor of Jamia Milliya Islamia, and dear Professor Abdul Rashid Trak, Vice Chancellor of Islamic University of Islamic Science and Technology, and faculty members of the university, of this university. I don't really want to, count your names because it is long list. Even if I don't count, Allah knows all of you. Okay, and I would like to devote my special thanks to the Vice Chancellor that accepted, organize this workshop, and also the idea that initiated by Dr. Marazi and Ghulam Nabi. So I want, to really thank them, and may Allah accept their, rewards, and inshallah we will give them, equivalent things in the hereafter. In this world, whatever I say is doesn't work. Now, I would like to first apologize that I have a lot of spelling mistakes in my writings. Actually, it is not a paper, and it is just, to share our ideas. Why we are here? We are not here in order to discuss views and thought of Bediüzzaman Said Nursi, because 2 days is not enough. Maybe several years is not enough. But we are here actually to sign memorandum of understanding between our foundation and this university. And inshallah, this will establish a very strong ties and create bridges between us, between, Kashmiri universities and intellectuals and Istanbul Foundation for Science and Culture. And here also I would like to mention that we have hosted Mihrajuddin in our graduate conference, which is actually kind of, every year we do graduate conferences. We invite students who are doing master and PhD studies in the Nursi study area from all over the world, and we bring Muslims and Christians together. And Mihrajuddin was actually chaired by a Christian scholar who is expert on Nursi, and he is the Vice Chancellor of Virginia Theological Seminary. That seminary is the highest institution of Anglican Church in the world. So his paper was actually chaired by Ian Markham, huh? You remember? Okay, so this door is open for all of you, brothers and sisters. And I'm very happy, you see, we have a lot of sisters. And did you know that Nursi has special section for women? And very rare to find in modern time scholars' writings addressing for ladies. So you have, very special place in Said Nursi's writings. And actually, in this today and tomorrow's workshop, we don't have any lady. This is not something right. So we should have at least, half ladies, about 8 or minimum 5, 6, of them. But inshallah, in the coming future, we would like to see you. And we have a very, hardworking sister, Abida Kausar, and she did her PhD actually in Nursi area. So she's Kashmiri, you may, probably you know her, and we are inviting you. Now, I know that I am allowed to speak 30 minutes. 30 minutes is not enough to introduce Said Nursi's, actually intellectual biography, but it is very long time for an academic meeting. 30 minutes, isn't it?
I'll give you 5 minutes from me and mine.
Yeah, No, I don't want to surpass because it may be boring. Now, who is Said Nursi? Can you please raise your hand? Who knows Said Nursi and his thought ideas, Risale-i, so that I will speak accordingly.
Not known.
Pardon me? You don't know him? How about brothers? Can you raise your hand, those who have read a bit? So it seems, we need, sir, to organize more conferences. Okay. Now my talk will comprise this, short biodata of Said Nursi, his intellectual biography, his intellectual masters, where he was, nurturing, and his spiritual masters, what is his mission, and Risale-i, what Risale-i consists of, and especially in Nursi's concept of dawah, what is the place of dars and darsane. It is actually Dr. Marazi touched a bit, but we need to understand very well and to locate it in the prophetic tradition, because Nursi did not do anything from his own. He followed prophetic traditions. He's not prophet, that's okay, but he is not prophet, just he is not prophet, because a prophet cannot come after Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the qualities that you can see in his writing, his living, his intellectual mind, all coming from Quran and prophetic tradition. And peaceful character of his mission. This is one of the main characteristic of his mission is peacefulness, and he's being distant from politics. Actually, Professor Marazi also touched. Now, Said Nursi himself divides his life into two. He was born in 1876. In some sources, you may find 72, 76, 78, but I consider it 76, doesn't matter. And in Bitlis, called Nurs village, and village Nurs, you have visited. It is very remote area, and it is very, how to say, very among the mountains. Looks like Himalaya mountains, and this place looks like actually remind me Nurs. So he divides his life into two categories. From his birth till 1923, he calls Old Said. Old Said actually covers the period of Ottoman state, Ottoman Empire, and transition region period. And New Said from 1923 until he passed away in 1960. So he lived a very long life, despite being, having a lot of enemies, international and national. But Allah gave him, a very, long and fruitful life. So in Old Said period, Nursi started his education at the age of 9. He had extraordinary learning capability and memorizing capability. So learning and memorizing, it is very seldom that unite on the same person, okay? Someone can be intelligent, but their memory capability may be little. So that's why the name of Bediüzzaman was given to him, wonder of age. He could memorize books of Islamic, basic books of Islamic teaching, like this, covering the pages of the book. So today even you can find this sort of people that they can memorize with the photographic memory. So he memorized about 90 basic books of Islam. And those books, he says that I didn't read those books to acquire knowledge, but I read them to find how the authors of these books, the scholars, approached the Quran. And he said that I wanted to get the methodology of them. And later on he said that these 90 books came a ladder with 90 steps to reach to the sky of Quran. Okay? So he learned how to learn, okay? He didn't acquire knowledge from those books. And this was actually later on came sort of intellectual source for him. In order, you know, how these people actually understood Quran. And Nursi wasn't sharp only in the field of religious Islamic studies. He was sharp also in the, you know, socio-political subject as well. For example, in his early writings during the old Said period, you can find that he writes about freedom. He says that I can live without bread, I cannot live without freedom. He writes on democracy. He actually tried to modernize late Ottoman. And he was talking about equality, justice, and he was talking about, you know, what Quran is actually ordering and what was practiced during the early Islam, Sharia, Mashwara, means consultation. So he says that, and also about how people to be employed in any case. He bases his idea on the saying of Prophet ﷺ, Sayyidul Qawm Khadimhum. You know this incident? So the Lord of people are the servant of people. So who serves more, he becomes the leader. Yeah, he becomes eligible to be the leader. So in this respect, he says that democracy has 3-4 important steps. One is eligibility. So you elect, with election, okay? And secondly, democracy has, you know, a character of consultation, like Parliament House. So Islam is saying, وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ وَيَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ. Actually, Quran is dictating us to come together and to do mashwara. And the third one is justice, equality, to be equal in front of law, you see. And he gives some examples from the Prophet ﷺ time how 4 caliphs became, you know, equal with even Jewish and some Christians and some mushriks in front of the law, in front of the, you know, judges. So all these things actually makes up the elements of democracy. So with these sort of ideas, Nursi drew the attention of local governors of Bitlis, Eastern Anatolia. And that time there was a very, you know, intellectually high capacity governor called Tahir Pasha. He discovered Said Nursi. He said that you have to go to Istanbul, to present your views and ideas to the Sultan Abdul Hamid II. And also Nursi had, you know, sharp ideas regarding with the name of this university, you see. Nursi wanted to combine religious and physical sciences. And in that respect, he actually proposed a university called Madrasat Zahra University. So Madrasat Zahra University combining religious and physical sciences. What Professor Marazi actually pointed out, he didn't leave anything, you know, for me to discuss to present in my paper. However, that time in Ottoman, especially in the Eastern Anatolia, there were 3 types of education, an institution. One is called madrasa, teaching only religious subjects. The other one was teaching physical subjects called maktab. And the third one was teaching oral culture. You know, this tariqah, Qadiriyya and Naqshbandiya. And actually Nursi was brought up in Naqshbandiya order, you know, during his childhood. He had very deep, we will see later on, very deep connection with Abdul Qadir Jilani and Shahin Naqshband and Imam Rabbani. And we are lucky that we are going to have two papers, you know, will be presented by scholars of this university on Nursi, Abdul Qadir Jailani, Nursi, and Imam Rabbani. So Nursi was sent to Istanbul in 1907. So when we are talking 1907, that time we didn't have cellular phones, no internet, no telephone, no aircraft, okay? And first, you know, first motor-driven vehicles were on the, you know, market around 1905. So Nursi went, you know, sometimes on horseback, sometimes walking. He reached in Istanbul early 1907. He wanted to present his project to Sultan Abdul Hamid, but unfortunately he couldn't. Not only he was unable to present, he was disappointed with Istanbul because he had great admiration and expectation that Sultan and his surroundings will take his projects and put into practice. Because during his stay in Tahir Pasha's palace, about 3 years he spent there, he found and he listened from Tahir Pasha about the level of Western materialistic, atheistic education. He said that Muslim world cannot stand against this education. That's why he wanted to combine religious and physical sciences together. He didn't stay long there. About 3 years he spent in Istanbul, and then he went back to his homeland, Van, and traveled to Damascus. And that time Damascus was cultural and intellectual center of Ottoman state. Istanbul was political center, but Damascus was intellectual. Actually, he wanted to present his views and ideas regarding Madrasatul Zahra project to the scholars of that time in Damascus. He succeeded actually. And can I have one Damascus sermon here? Yeah. Actually, we brought about 100 Damascus sermons to be distributed to you. But I can see that more than 100 brothers and sisters are here. So what to do? Dear Vice Chancellor. Okay. What you will get from the, you know, organizer. We have hundreds of them. It is very important. It is handbook of the Muslim youth. Not only Muslim youth. Tom Michel, he is a Christian priest. He presented a paper on this Damascus sermon. He said this is not only for Muslims, this is valid for Christians as well. Yeah. In Damascus sermon, I think there is a paper regarding Damascus sermon. Who is going to present that? I have read, you know, one abstract. And anyway, we will hear, you know, maybe tomorrow or today sometimes. In Damascus sermon, Nursi identifies the sicknesses of the Muslim world. And when we read, we see that today we have those sicknesses with us. So unless we remedy those 6 sicknesses, it is difficult for us to become well. I'm going to read, you know, a little bit what he means by Damascus sermon. In the conditions of the present time in these lands, I have learned a lesson in the school of humankind's social life, and I have realized that what has allowed foreigners, Europeans, to fly towards the future on progress, while it arrested us and kept us in respect of material development in the Middle Ages, are 6 sicknesses. And these sicknesses are, first, the coming of life and rise of despair. Yes. So today we are fallen into despair that we cannot do it, we cannot win, we cannot stand up, we cannot do that. And this is now in Western culture that they are in despair because they don't believe in Allah, they don't believe in the hereafter. The most darkness of it is that they are hopeless about life. Because as Nietzsche says that, they became nihilist. They don't expect anything. That's why the rate of committing suicide is very high in Western world. But alhamdulillah, we believe in the hereafter. Even we are tortured, we are, under zulum, we are, under many, difficulties of life, but we say that, inshallah, in the hereafter, Allah will grant us, will give us good life. Now, the second one is the death of truthfulness in social and socio-political life. So, in politics, you see, what we hear. Look at this man, he doesn't know politics. He tells us always truth. He should lie. So it means politics and social life is based on lie. Even today, you see. And third one, love of enmity. So Nursi says that we are created to love, not hate. If we have something to hate, we have to hate hatred within our heart towards others. So we are created for love, to love. So actually, in our social life, we have to bring love to the center of our life. To love our family, to love ourselves, to love our neighbors, to love humanity at large, to love environment, to love the universe. So think that if love is central in life, and this world will become like Jannah, like heaven. And the fourth one, not knowing the luminous bonds that binds the believers to one another. So we have to think, you see, that we have been created by the same Allah at large, whether Muslim, non-Muslim. Our Creator is same. And coming to Islam, our Qibla is same, our Prophet is same. Our many lovers are same. So why we shouldn't hate each other? So knowing that the luminous bonds that binding us. And the fifth one, which today unfortunately it is experienced, despotism, he says, is dominant in our life. And Nursi says that the worst despotism is intellectual despotism. That doesn't allow you to think, to produce views and ideas. And the sixth one, and unfortunately today also, the most life-killing disease is restricting endeavor to our personal benefits. So we don't think benefit of our society, usually we think our own benefits. And this is, these six sicknesses. Now, Nursi, at the end of, he says that, I shall explain by means of 6 words the lesson I have learned from the pharmacy of Quran. So Nursi is presenting medicines from the pharmacy of Quran to the sicknesses, to these 6 sicknesses. So Nursi always consults Quran, consults prophets and prophetic life. And Nursi from Damascus, he goes to Istanbul, and that time in 1911, Sultan Abdul Hamid was overthrown. Those who know a bit of history, they know that. And Sultan Rashid is in power. And Sultan Rashid was going to visit Balkan countries. That time, Balkan countries were under the rule of Ottoman. And Nursi was invited by Sultan Rashid to be in that envoy, and he could found chance to meet with Sultan Rashid during the visit, and he got promise of supporting his Madrasatul Zahra University. But unfortunately, the First World War actually didn't allow him to establish that university, and he fought in the First World War against Russian invaders, and he was wounded and taken capture of war and exiled to Central Siberia in 1915. I have visited the town that he spent 2.5 years. It's called Kostroma in the Central Siberia, about 500 kilometers north of Moscow. After communist revolution of 1917, Nursi escaped from that exile, and he arrived in Istanbul. When he arrived in Istanbul, unfortunately, that time Istanbul Ottoman state was in the process of disintegration and collapse, and Istanbul was under the occupation of Western forces. And Nursi fought against the Western invading forces, not physically because it wasn't possible, but intellectually. He wrote a book called Kutuvat-ı Sitte, means 6 steps. And in those books, he was, condemning their invasion, and he was actually encouraging people to come against them. And in Ankara, that time, what we call it, National Front government was going to, establish. We had that time, in that period, between 1918 till 1923, we had 2 different governments in Ottoman. One in Istanbul, one in Ankara. And Istanbul was under the, control of occupying forces, and in Ankara we had, National Front, led by Mustafa Kemal. So Nursi was invited several times for his courageous, and intellectual capacity that was, doing, sort of physical struggle and jihad against, invading forces. He was invited to Ankara by Mustafa Kemal. He went to Ankara in 1922 November, and almost they were fighting, sort of, quarreling with Mustafa Kemal 5 times a day. When there was prayer time, Nursi was encouraging a member of parliament for pray, and Mustafa Kemal was getting angry with him. Why are you doing that? It is now our, we have to get our country strong, etc. And Nursi said that it is very difficult to fight with this man politically, and he left for one in 1923 May. And after 2 years, 3 years, he was exiled to Western Anatolia, and that lifelong exile started from 1926 till 1960. And sometimes in prison, sometimes in very, house arrest, sometimes in, exile from one town to another, until he died in 1960. And students of history, if they know a bit about history of Turkey, in 1960 May, there was a coup d'etat, and democratic government of Adnan Menderes was overthrown in May 27, and military government was in power, and they destroyed Nursi's graveyard in July 11th, and they have taken his body to an unknown destination. So keep in mind that Nursi even doesn't have a family, he doesn't have any property, he doesn't have even grave on earth. And that was actually in his will, you see. He said that I want that my grave to be secret, because I don't want that people to come and worship my body, my grave. So, and you see, qadar-i ilahi, taqdir-i ilahi, that his will was fulfilled by his so-called enemies. Now, coming to Nursi's writings. So Nursi, between 26 and 1960, he wrote 6,000 pages of commentary on Quran. So we can divide his writings into three categories. One, faith-based explanation, commentary of Quranic verses. And second, his defense speeches in the court cases. It is very important for the Muslim, people who want, to defend themselves against, attacks of others. And the third one is communication with his letters as students. That's called letters, what we say. And those letters, in those letters, actually, Nursi is teaching how process dawah under any kind of conditions, and teaching his students how to be good brothers. And in this book, actually, we have sincerity and brotherhood. We have also another 100 copies. So this, you see, this book, Damascus Sermon, will give us energy to work for Islam, and this book will teach us how to do that, okay, without breaking our brothers and sisters' hearts, and how to behave with other Muslim communities, you see. Because today, alhamdulillah, there are many kinds of Muslims that they are doing dawah, but it is heartbreaking that some of them are killing each other. What is, you see, unfortunate that the killer is saying Allahu Akbar, and the one who's getting killed is also saying Allahu Akbar. How unfortunate. This cannot be done. This is unacceptable. In Nursi's case and studies, this is never, you see, can find room in the heart of a Muslim. Shouldn't be. But unfortunately, this is happening. You see, why? Because we do not know how to do dawah. The correct dawah, the way that Prophet ﷺ did. Now, I think it's time. How many minutes? Huh? Exceeded. Okay. Now, I know that I exceeded my time, but I just want, to say a few words that Nursi has, I said about his intellectual sources, okay, masters. Now he has spiritual masters as well. And it is in this book, you can read that first spiritual master of Sayyid Nursi is Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Quran. And secondly, Abdul Qadir Jilani. He reads his book, Futuhul Ghaib, and he gets, nourishment from Futuhul Ghaib. And what kind of nourishment he gets? Actually, Abdul Qadir Jilani is indirectly addressing to Nursi, saying that you are in the place that you are teaching Islam to others, but you have to make your heart, first of all, to find remedies for your own heart, he says first. And then thirdly, about Imam Rabbani Ahmed Sarhandi. You see how he is getting from his mektubat. Now, I, really would like you to read this thing. And finally, what subjects Nursi has taught and written in his writings. He addresses children, he addresses youth, he addresses elderly, he addresses sick people, sincerity, brotherhood. He teaches about Quranic miraculousness, about Prophet ﷺ, philosophy, love, hatred, Ahl al-Bayt, and companion of the Prophet ﷺ, and about prophetic stories in the Quran, and spirits, angels, Satan, miracles, Jannah, Jahannam. So about praying, Nursi doesn't teach us how to pray. He teaches us why should we pray. Why should we pray, okay? About fasting, about peace, enmity, and greediness, concept of jihad. In Nursi's teaching, we have jihad manevi. He said, jihad bil huruf. The time is jihad bil huruf's time. Means that making jihad with pen, with letters, not with sword. Okay? And that's on a system. About consumerism, morality, hereafter, human happiness, civilization, sense of responsibility, sense of awareness, about women, racism, education, and of course Nursi brings into our life book of universe, the concept of book of universe, and human I, ana, egoism. Now all these things are well established in Risale-i. And if you can spare time for today and tomorrow, I am sure and I promise that you will learn a lot, but it's not enough. You have to get Said Nursi's collection and read. We have brought 2 sets of correction, their Vice Chancellor, to present, to your Nursi Corner library, and we will send more. And we have also some, books that's written on Nursi. We will also present later on. And I'm sorry that I have exceeded, my time. As I said in the beginning of my talk, that it is half an hour is not enough. Thank you very much for listening.